Dr. Berthena, how you doing? Welcome to the platform.
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about this interview. Excited to get into all of your deep, darkest secrets that we can't Google and let the voters decide.
Sounds good. So happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
No, thank you. And education is important,
It's
right?
very
It's
important.
important, and you're running for Nashville School Board, District 4.
District 4,
Um,
Donaldson, Hermitage, and Old Hickory.
Damish, Hermitage, and Old Hickory. How you feeling about it?
I'm feeling good. I'm really excited. We have a great response, community engagement. We're excited, ready to go.
And so I'm gonna go ahead and start off with it like this. What's gonna be the difference between this election and the last election that you participated in?
Great question. Last election, I had a lot of things going on. I stepped into the school board race. Several people in the community reached out to me after the passing of our former school board chair, Anna Shepard, who I knew and had worked with in the community. And her passing was a little difficult for me. So it took me a little time to decide to step into the race and get involved. But once I stepped in and really had those conversations, I got involved in the school board race. I do school improvement work at a national level. Really involved and really excited about this work. And I think the difference between this race and the last race is the level of engagement, the level of participation. We've been able to see what is happening on the school board now. We see the difference during the time that I served on the school board versus what's happening now on our school board. And I just think we need a good change, and our community wants a change. And so we're going to get out there and make it happen.
And so you already opened up the door for me. Good, thank you. So what is that change? What is that change? What is that change that that we need to see, specifically representing District 4 on the school board?
Well, I think we need. I can speak personally, and just from the feedback, I've held listening sessions across our community with teachers and support staff, with families, and even with students, just to kind of get their feedback on what they're looking for in representation on District 4. And they really want to make sure that they have a representative that's centering their voices and centering the voices of those who are most impacted by the decisions. Many of them just feel like their voice isn't heard, their representation isn't heard in District 4, and they want someone who is accessible, who is communicating, who is being intentional about uplifting their voice and the concerns that they have in District 4 and across our system. They also want someone who doesn't have to have a learning curve, who's been in there, who understands it. I'm a parent of 6. I tell everyone, I'm a parent of 6. 5 of my children have graduated from Metro Nashville Public Schools, and I still have a 3rd grader. So I experienced, like every other parent experienced, the challenges of the pandemic, the challenges prior to the pandemic. And then also being an educator with more than 25 years of experience, I understand what it's like to be a teacher in a classroom with large classroom sizes, with the lack of resources. I've been a school principal, so I understand what it takes to balance budget and what it feels like when you don't have the staff in place and you're trying to juggle things to make sure you're not only supporting your staff, but you're supporting students in the process. And then working at the national level, I'm able to really look at a lens on how MNPS fares as on a national lens, and things that we're doing well and opportunities that we definitely need to grow. And so just having that multi-layer perspective, I think, is important. I can, joining the school board, I can hop in and hit the road.
Running.
Running. Not even a learning curve.
Right.
And just know how to be intentional about centering the conversations that we need to have.
So there's a lot of conversations right now that are being had around education. And for me, it has to be difficult being somebody that, specifically has to represent, a district, right? And those are your constituents. but also understanding that like there's a larger picture when it comes to education that maybe your constituents are affected by or not affected by, right? And so how do you balance both of those? Because I believe that somebody that's in your position could also help community grow and learn, right?
Absolutely.
Because they may not know or may not understand. Like, yeah, maybe our district may not be as affected by certain issues that are happening in MNPS, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't care about them at the same time.
Absolutely.
And so, as a school board member, how do you balance that and also help your community potentially grow when it comes to those things when you know that, yeah, they may be not affected by it, but hey, this is something we need to be learning from and tapped into as a community?
Yeah, so equity is a big issue for me, right? What I want for my district, I want for every other district across our system, right? If we have high quality schools, I want high quality schools in every part of Nashville. I feel like every student not only needs but deserves and has the right to a high quality education, period. And so as I have conversations, not only representing my district, but looking at the bigger landscape of MNPS as a system, there are issues there that we can address as a whole that will help my district in particular and will help our system. So when we think about some of the issues that are really important to me is funding. Historically, Metro Nashville Public Schools has been underfunded. Right? Historically, that has been the case. We have to get it right. Our mayor has done, over the last couple of years, major investments into our school system. But our state ranks 45th in how they contribute to funding. So not only do we need to push our city, we need to push our state in doing what's right by funding our schools, right? And making sure that our schools has the resources that they need to help our students, right? Another issue for me is around investing in our teachers and our support staff. Right now, we are facing major shortages across our district, right? And so if we are not doing our due diligence in investing in our teachers and our support staff, and that's from our bus drivers to our cafeteria workers to our teachers and our paraprofessionals and everyone that has a part in making sure that our children are successful, we're not doing our due diligence, right? And so that means we are supporting pay increases. That means that we are supporting professional development to ensure that our teachers and our staff are truly meeting the needs of our students, and that means meeting them where they are and helping them grow. And then also making sure that it's sustainable. Right? So how are we being intentional about retaining and recruiting and sustaining our district? And so I think for me, those are system-wide things as well as things that can be particular for District 4, right? And really developing that growth. And so there's so many different areas for me that I would like to see us truly focus in on. So it's not either District 4 or our MNPS school system, it's both and. And we need to make sure that we are looking at that.
You have a lot of experience, right? I was looking like, masters, doctors, more certifications, right?
Yeah.
which I think is needed for anybody that's going to, I think, be school board and understand the education system. Like you said, you can come in there and hit the ground running. You're also a woman of color.
I am.
Right? And we know that the public school system in Nashville specifically don't educate specifically people of color, but even more specifically black boys the same way or as equitable, right? When it comes to suspensions and expulsions, about 70% black kids, majority black boys, right? And then that goes into safety, public safety, right? Behavior, discipline, what does that look like? How should that be carried out? should SORs be involved in that process? So can you speak a little bit about what public safety looks like to you? What discipline and behavior looks like to you in District 4, but also maybe just in MNPS in general, that'll be equitable for all kids, or make sure kids are not missing out on education?
Absolutely. And so thank you for that question. For me, it's critically important that we are disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline. We have to. Part of disrupting that school-to-prison pipeline is making sure that we are addressing the social, emotional, and mental well-being of our students. Okay? What that looks like, I know Metro Schools has recently in elementary added advocacy centers within their schools. And those advocacy centers are not punitive, but they're restorative.
Right.
It gives students a place to learn how to regulate and reflect on what has gotten them discombobulated, as we say, but gotten them where they need a time to cool down and refocus and re-identify. It gives them a place to talk through some of the concerns that they have, and then recenter themselves and be able to reintegrate back in the classroom. And so I think also in middle school, that looks like middle and high school, that looks like our restorative practice centers.
Right.
And the areas around restorative practice. I would really like to see in middle and high school that they expand upon that. And in recent talks with the district, they're incorporating something called peace centers, which is with those peace centers, it's also a restorative space where students can go back into leave out of their classrooms, again, look at regulating their emotions, talking through some of the challenges that they're having, being able to go in and just recenter and come back in the classroom. I was a high school teacher. I taught at Antioch High School. And I was part of the leadership that started Cane Ridge High School. So I work with high school students. And oftentimes in those conversations, we had opportunities where students needed to recenter.
Right.
They needed to refocus.
Right.
They needed to be redirected in those conversations. We need adults in place who have the knowledge and the skills to be able to do that and to be able to help and guide our students.
Right.
If we don't know other options exist, we're going to continue to perpetuate the things that we're used to. Right? And so I think part of that restorative practice is really showing students and showing our youth that there's a different way. And there's a different way of doing things. And really partnering with teachers so that they understand that there's a different way too, right? Because sometimes we can be in spaces where our reaction can also sometimes contribute to what's happening within classrooms or happening within hallways. And so I think as we really look to build a restorative space from elementary through high school, it has to be a collective effort, not only for our students, but for our staff as well, in truly understanding what that means. Okay, and really understanding it from adverse childhood experiences and all of the things that contribute to children and the things that they bring into the schools and the things that they are experiencing within our schools as well.
I've had a chance to build a little bit with Safer Schools Nashville. Really great organization made up of former MNPS students. And they're pushing a lot of the social emotional learning, but they're also having this huge discussion around SROs, school resource officers. What are your thoughts for school resource officers? Is there a place? Is there some type of equilibrium where it makes sense for police officers to be in middle schools and high schools and our public schools here?
So I think there really needs to be a balance around that. I believe that if we do have officers in our schools, our officers need training in restorative practices to make sure that we're building those relationships. What's more important is, for me, is not so much having officers, but we're having restorative practice leaders in our schools that can be able to guide and really uphold the conversations and the culture and climate in which we are really looking to create within our schools.
Right.
Is that a place necessarily for police officers being in that space, as much as we want restorative practice leaders who can really guide that conversation and really change it? Now, there are opportunities. We're in a world now where there's school shootings, right? And that's the reality of things that are going on. Could police officers play a part in school shootings? Absolutely. That's a safety thing that we need to disrupt. But for everyday environment, we really need restorative practice leaders within our schools that serve in those roles, that can interact and build relationships with our communities.
Right.
When I was growing up, we had we had members within our community that really built relationships with us, so that when things became emotional or when the climate rised, they had already had relationships with students within the school that they were able to disrupt it and redirect it quickly within that. And so that is something that I would really like to see us move towards.
And I want to kind of pivot back and get kind of specific to District 4.
Sure.
Because all of us don't live in District 4.
Yeah.
Right? And so can you highlight for us, kind of some of the schools that are in District 4, but also what are some things that you hope to bring to District 4 that you haven't seen, there's been lack of, or just something totally different that you want to make sure that the youth and the parents and just the overall community in District 4 needs to have and will have with you as their representative on the school board?
Yeah, thank you for that. In District 4, we have 18 schools between our elementary, middle, and our one high school, which is McGavock. McGavock is the largest high school in the district, serving just under 2,000 students across the district. Recently, what we have seen within McGavock High School has been an increase in the amount of disruption happening within the school. And for me, I think it is a result of us not doing our due diligence in really addressing that social, emotional, and mental well-being of our students and our staff at this point. Right. The pandemic has, and so we've had these challenges in high schools across our city. I think the pandemic has only exacerbated that. Right. And I think that there really needs to be more of a priority in making sure that we truly address that and we truly train and support our teachers and our staff within our schools to be able to support that as well. We need to make sure that we are increasing social workers and mental health counselors and psychologists within our schools as well to be able to give our teachers and staff support. And so that is one of the areas that I would love to focus on. Another thing from our listening sessions that we often hear is our voice isn't being heard. So I held listening sections and focus groups with high school students.
Wow.
At McGavock High School to discuss what are some of the issues that are important to you.
Right.
Some of the feedback that I got was we really need more, we need more counselors within our school. Right? We need more outlets to be able to support students who are going through so many circumstances that are at home, right. Or in their environment that they're bringing into the school. Right. And because of all of the things that they're experiencing, sometimes learning is not their first priority.
Right.
Right? And so they asked more mental health counselors or more counselors in general, just to be able to have those conversations. Right. And they asked it not only for themselves, but for their teachers too. Because they said, our teachers are stressed out, right? Right? We're all stressed out. Right. And so how can we support ourselves and provide spaces within our school for that to happen? And how can we do the same for our teachers too, right. and our support staff within our schools? Right. And so I just thought that was extremely, extremely important, hearing that from the voice of our students. Another thing that our students want to do is how do they navigate circumstances right. within their schools, they wanted more interaction with their school principal. How do I create systems where there's more communication and more relationship with their school principal and the leaders within their school? And so how do we facilitate ways in which that happens, right? From families that we talked about, just creating greater family school partnerships and increasing communication. And so that is something that they would like to see across our schools, making sure that that communication is consistent, it's transparent, and access is there, knowing how to navigate the system. Metro Nashville Public Schools is a huge system.
It is.
Right? And so how do we make parents more comfortable in interacting and getting involved? I've received so many calls and working with families just across our district on how best to support their children. And so how do we create hubs that truly support families to be more involved and more engaged in supporting their kids? Because we know the more a family is engaged, the better a student will be, and the increase of success that they will have. And so how do we create those environments that encourage and bring families in to be able to support them, not only in school, but at home too, to be able to do so.
So you brought up something that is real interesting. You're talking about families. You're talking about growth. Nashville. That's a lot of growth. There's a lot of gentrification. And it's spreading out, right? It's spreading out to the Hermitages, the Donaldsons, and beyond. So I'm a Nashville native here. Born and raised, went to Pearl High School. Family went to White Creek, so I'm kind of, they don't really... I'm a Firebird, they Cobras. That's another story.
Okay.
And so, and I've had this talk with other active school board members and people in education. I have a almost 2-year-old son. He'll be 2 next month. I understand the Metro Public School System if I look at the numbers, I have a black son, convince me, as a person that went to public school here, why should I choose, especially if I can afford it, to send my son to public school instead of maybe doing like a charter or like a private school system? Because I really want to believe in the public school system. But if I look at the numbers, especially for my situation, a black son, it's like, what can I do? But I know as a parent, I can have I can play a role into that improvement, but I don't know how much of a role I can play. And so as a potential school board member, and if I'm a parent coming to you, if I'm living in District 4, like, hey, Dr. Berthena, I have these options, what are we looking like?
So let me tell you, like I tell everybody else, I'm a big proponent of neighborhood and zone schools. A big proponent of it. My children all went through MNPS, right? And so when I say my children, and I say that I have 6, 4 of them are my biological children. I also had legal custody of my sister. She graduated from McGavick High School. I also had custody and legal guardianship of one of my former students whose parents were undocumented and got deported because I felt like she needed an opportunity for success too, right? And then my own children have also gone through Metro Nashville Public Schools. So I've had 1 come out of McGavick, 2 come out of Antioch, 1 come out of Hillsborough, and 1 come out of MLK. And I currently have a 3rd grader in MNPS elementary school. And so for me, my priority is around making sure that not only my child has an opportunity for success, but every child within that school has an opportunity for success, whether their parents are actively involved or their parents are trying to figure out how to navigate the system, or they're disconnected in some way. It is important as a community that we are wrapping our arms around children.
Right.
Period. They are our future. and they will be the ones who will take care of us.
Right.
So I have a responsibility, just like you have a responsibility, to make sure that your black son and my third grade black son and my 21-year-old black son all have opportunities of success, and we are putting those structures in place and holding that level of accountability to make it happen.
Right.
And so as we are doing private schools or we're doing charter schools, that money is being drained out. And we still have students left in our local and zone schools. Where is their opportunity for success too?
Right.
Right? And if I have the means to be able to do so, then I am going to contribute to this local school to make sure that it's good enough for my baby and every other baby in there. And we just have a responsibility to make sure that it happens.
Right.
And the more that you're involved, the more that I am involved, it helps bring up that school and
Right.
really helps support that school.
Right.
And so I truly relate to where you're going through. My son came through, I have two sons, black sons who have come through MNPS. And I know my third grader, he's cute and sweet now. Right? But at some point, he's not going to be cute and sweet.
Right.
And he's going to be subject to the same types of profiling that my 21-year-old son, who, by the way, is a senior this year, graduating from Vanderbilt University, coming out of Metro Nashville Public Schools, right?
Kudos, because...
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only is he graduating, he's graduating debt-free,
Oh, wow.
and he already has a job.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay?
That's
And so
amazing.
he will be relocating. And so what I want for him, I want for every other black boy that's coming through our school. We have got to do better with our students,
Right.
with our children,
Right.
right? And we have to make sure that we are leveling the playing field.
Right.
And making sure that we provide that foundation so that every child will succeed. In this race, I don't know how many people I have talked to whose children are in private school and in other places, and I have said, hey, guess what? 10 of you live in the same neighborhood.
Right.
None of you are sending your kid to the local public school. But guess what? You could create the same circumstance that Lachlan did for your neighborhood,
Yep.
right? And create that same opportunity for not only your children, but the children in that neighborhood too.
Right.
And you're leveling it up and bringing it up.
Right. Yeah, no, that's what I learned. Like, and it totally flipped, right? Because I think I had a great, middle school, high school, elementary experience in Nashville. But then you become an adult, you start thinking practical.
Yeah.
You start figuring out, oh, hold on, wait a minute. Our whole state is ranked 45. Hold on, wait a minute. What did I miss? But then, after having these type of conversations, I really understood like the role that I could play as a parent, right?
And as a community member.
As a community member,
right?
Yeah.
And so as a parent, we want to make sure that our kids are okay.
Right.
But it's a bigger picture too.
Exactly.
We want to make sure that every kid is okay.
Right.
Because what I want for mine, you want for yours.
Right. And I should want what I have for mine for yours. That
Yes,
should be that
absolutely.
the community
and,
talk.
And we have to, and that's a community talk that we need to come back to.
Right.
I remember growing up, I went to public school growing up, and I came through a community, you may have done it too, where if you got in trouble at school, every neighbor knew you got in trouble, and they was putting you in check all the way home, right? Where you got in trouble at home. You ain't even made it home yet.
Look, I got in trouble. I used to get whooping just for acting like I was finna get upset at school.
Absolutely.
It was different back then. Now
But it's that village community, right?
Right.
That it's that community coming around to say we are going to do what's right by kids.
Exactly.
And so even in that, I had families whose parents didn't even have an 8th grade education. They hadn't graduated from high school, but they knew the importance of education because they wanted to make sure their kids and the community's kids didn't go through what they had to go through. And I think every generation has to build on top of that.
Right.
And we need to be strategic and we need to be intentional about making sure that that happens.
Right.
And calling people out when it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm all for calling out.
Yeah.
Go ahead and put it on Front Street. And so I like that you had those listening sessions, right, with students, right? Because a lot of times, like they're the most affected, but they're usually not listened to.
Absolutely.
Or the least listened to when it comes to what type of experience that they want to have. And they just went through something that none of us have probably went through when it comes to a pandemic and having to
This is new to all of us.
remote. Does everybody have access to internet, laptop, all of these things, right? And so how do you tackle that going forward? Because it's going to be something I feel is a part of our social fabric for a long time. And it has made us, I think, look at education in a different way, but also identify some disparities, identify some blind spots that we've had for a long time, some neglecting that we've been doing for a long time. And so how do you move forward with still addressing those and still learning and growing and figuring out how to best serve our students here, specifically in District 4?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. Part of that listening session with our students, one of the things that I never thought about, right? A lot of our students work, right? Yeah. And a lot of our students work not because they have to, it's because they're supporting families in different ways, right? And for some of them, this remote learning opportunity was great for them because it gave them the flexibility for their education and an opportunity to get out in that workforce. Right. And now for them, for some of them, the conversation is around, I don't have the same level of flexibility. And so I'm intentionally wanting to withdraw, go to an online learning program so that I can retain that level of flexibility. Because it worked for me. Yeah. I had other students who said, you know what? I was more focused. I didn't have the distractions. I wasn't being bullied. And I didn't have to go through those challenges that I faced within school. Right. And so remote learning worked for them. Right. They all admitted, at first I took it for granted. And then I had to realize I had to take it serious. Right. And so those were growth opportunities for them as well. And then we had students also who said, you know what? Online learning didn't work for me. I am an in-person, face-to-face. Right. I can't concentrate, right? I have a short attention span, and I just need somebody in the classroom with me. And so in saying that, I'm saying that we really need to rethink how we support students. Because some of our students may want to do well in a remote learning opportunity because it provides them the flexibility. Right. And other students may need that in-person classroom space. Right. And so we really have to look at that dynamic on how we're truly supporting every student within our school. Right. Personally, I learn best in person. Right. I took an online class and I thought I was going to die. I'm not going to lie. I'm just an in-person social butterfly. I like to interact. I learn and grow from learning in person. I think that is the best mode, but that's part of my bias because that's how I learn. Right, yeah. But I think we need to make sure that we are looking at it equitably. We are ensuring that we are meeting students where they are, that we are assessing them to see where they are, and then we are really guiding that to improve those outcomes for them and involving them in the conversation and involving their families in the conversation.
Yeah, that's you just made me think about something I never think about. The flexibility of students working and saying, hey, I prefer to do an all online high school education.
I was shocked.
Because I need to support my household. Wow. That's different.
That's different. But if we're thinking about equity, that's the reality of a lot of families across our district, right? Yeah. So we say that kids need to be kids. But if we're really looking at how we are supporting kids in our districts and families in our district, we have to have different kinds of conversations. Right. And be creative. And what does it really mean to make sure that our kids are college ready, career ready, or just ready for life? Right. And so we really have to think about that and really examine that and making sure that we're not making blanket statements and we're really getting in and doing the work. And so I think coming back as a board member, I think those are conversations. It really takes someone who understands this and can lead those conversations and know what questions to ask, when to ask those questions, and what type of planning we can have. Right. So for me, in doing school improvement work nationally, working with schools and districts, it's what is the mission of Metro Nashville Public Schools?
Right. I don't know what it would.
What is the vision of
Right.
Metro Nashville
Yeah.
Public Schools, and what are the goals?
Yeah.
Right? And any conversation that we have, are we aligning it to it? Right?
Right.
Because ultimately it comes back to, we need to make sure that our kids are prepared.
Right. Yeah.
And so oftentimes what I see are distractions.
Right.
Right? Instead of those intentional conversations, those transparent conversations, and oftentimes those hard conversations.
Yeah.
Right? Where are we as a district? Where do we need to grow? Is this working over here? If it's not, do we need to rethink about it? Do we really need to redirect? Are we truly looking at that equity framework
Right.
that we say that we're looking to do? So for me, I'm really excited that Dr. Batto has hired someone that really focuses in on equity, right? Because now we're beginning to shift. We've started,
Right.
right?
Right.
And of course, we have a long way to go, but we're really making sure that that's important.
Right.
How are we making sure that it's equitable from District 4 to
Right.
District 2 to District 6 to District 8 and across our district?
Yeah, I
Right.
think school board members are going to have to probably be way more creative than before, because technology has changed the game. And people going to have to do a lot of reflecting, I think, of getting away from what they was comfortable with and what they feel like education should be, and what the youth these days want, because technology, kids are becoming millionaires on a laptop. Like that's just what it is these days, right? And STEM is becoming, I think, more important, but just in a different way than I think we've imagined what STEM was 10, 20 years ago. Especially when it was kind of new. STEM, let's focus on STEM. Well, STEM now is Instagram, it's TikTok, it's these other social media platforms, or just technology coding, where I just need to learn the skill. I don't know if I need to go to get a 4-year degree.
Right. That's where trade come in,
that's
right?
Where trade, and what does and how do a public school system respond to that? And incorporate those things over time.
Right.
And which I think is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's where some of that misconception comes in, right? Because Metro Nashville Public Schools provides computer science coursework,
Right.
and STEM coursework.
Right.
And so my son attended school. Right now he's a senior at Vanderbilt. His major is computer engineering, right? Going
Right.
into STEM. I'm a chemistry and physical science teacher.
Right.
For me, it's so important that we increase representation of our Black and brown kids in STEM.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
From male to female.
Right.
And so since I'm a female, that's my space, right? But I also think it's important that our Black males as well have an opportunity for that, because
Right.
STEM is there.
Right.
And we need more people in STEM. Technology is blowing up, and it's changing every other day. I feel like there's always something new. And I have a third grader, an 8-year-old. And I feel like he was born in the age of technology. I have something wrong with my iPhone, I just give it to him and be like, here, baby.
Troubleshoot that.
Troubleshoot that, right? He's already into coding,
Right.
and doing work in coding, and he loves it.
Right.
Lego League and Minecraft and all of those technology things are his jam.
Right.
And so how are we infusing that?
Right.
And so MNPS does have STEM grants. They have the STEM program where they're really working to increase the level of STEM in middle school for students. There are programs, after school programs and during school programs, where schools are getting STEM certification. Elementary, middle, and high schools are getting STEM certification. There's a state level STEM certification.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a national STEM certification. I served on the national committee
Wow.
for STEM certification through Cognia. Which has that. And so there's different programs that are really looking to increase the representation of STEM in our school. And we see the importance of how STEM is playing out in building and improving our academic outcomes too.
I want to go to something that I haven't hit on in this specific way.
Sure.
But it just hit me not too long ago, when I knew I was having you on, I was going to ask you about this. Well, see what your role could be in this. we talk about the school to prison pipeline. And I've been talking to all these, elected candidates for judicial elections and stuff like that. And the common thing that keeps coming up is like, hey, I don't even like juvenile justice, right? How do we deter you from even being up in the courtrooms? Like, and that's meeting them in where they are, which you brought up, right? Being that resource or providing resources that will alleviate them from even having to make a choice that would possibly make them end up in juvenile court. What role could you see as a school board member, playing a part in diverting you from even ending up in the juvenile court system? And this is something that I never thought about a school board member being like, I'm thinking school board member, but it's all connected. And right, we're all part of the community. And so how could you see yourself being an advocate, a voice, and using, your position of power that you may have as a school board member in District 4 to get in front of those youth and be honest and say, hey, I see that, that you might be living in poverty. You may not have certain resources that may lead you down a path to get those resources by any means necessary, where you shouldn't even have to worry about those things, and it's up for us to make sure you have that. What role do you see yourself playing?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I think that question is kind of part of my legacy. So my mom is a Nashville native. She graduated from Cameron High School in 1958, right? And so that was during segregated times, and she saw the impact and the inequities that existed then, and some of the same challenges that we exist now.
Right.
And one of the things that she often told me was, because she was during the time of segregation, all of her teachers were black, right? She grew up in J.C. Napier.
Right.
And one thing that she said was, one thing that our teachers instilled in us was we would not use our circumstances to define who we were and limit our ability. And so those teachers did not allow students. They held high expectations for students and made them step up, right,
Yeah.
To the plate. And I think for us, it's not only our school system and our schools that need to do that work, but it's the partnerships with our community that also needs to happen. School doesn't happen in isolation. Kids don't happen in isolation. So it really is going to take our school system and our partnerships with our communities and our partnerships with our judges, right? If we truly want to push this restorative idea, it is going to take all of our stakeholders, right? So not only, our school system, our wraparound support systems, our nonprofit organizations, our faith-based institutions, we have got to work together to disrupt the school to prison pipeline and provide opportunities where students see a different way. More after school programs need to happen in our city. So that we engage students after school. When you have students who are not engaged, they find things to do.
They get engaged.
They get engaged whether you want them to or not.
So
why can we not find opportunities across our city to prioritize after school programs that truly engage and become a partner? We have some, we need to improve upon it. Within our schools, right? I think faith-based institutions play a part. So as a board member, I think is really advocating in that role to make sure that we are truly having those conversations. I'm a public school kid. Was it easy? Did I get off track? Absolutely, along the way. But it was my family, it was friends, it was the community that all kept us in check to make that happen. For my kids, same thing. It was the community, it was faith-based institution, it was friends. We kept each other in check, right, to make sure that happens. And I think every child needs that same level of support system and engagement. Families come to me all the time. I'm actively involved. I am constantly returning phone calls. I am constantly connecting them with resources. I am constantly partnering with schools and being intentional with schools to say, hey, what do you need that you're not getting? right? And really engaging that conversation, because for me, I can't be a good school board member if I'm not informed about what's going on.
Right.
And so prior to every board meeting, prior to when I was on the board for that 4 months, I intentionally reached out to the schools. I intentionally reached out to families.
Right.
I constantly engaged students
Right.
whose voices was heard, so that as I made decisions, I center their voices.
Right.
For me, it's so important that we are centering the voices of those who are most impacted by our decisions. That's our families, our students, our teachers, and our staff.
Right.
We got to center their voices. And we have to make sure that we are looking at our school system not in isolation, because our schools can't do it alone.
Right.
It's really going to take all of us.
And I know on your platform, you're really big on heavy and investing in teachers and staff, right? Teachers are staff, but other staff, bus drivers.
I feel like every person in the school is a part of the school community and
Yeah.
can make an impact on a student.
Right.
Right? That's from our custodian to, everyone.
Yep.
Everyone within our school has the ability to make an impact on a student's life and to build a relationship. That's
Right.
another person, that's another advocate for that child.
Right.
Right? And so we need to make sure that happens. And so you say I'm big on investing in our teachers and our support staff. I'm also big on supporting the social, emotional, and mental well-being of our students. I'm also big on making sure that we address learning gaps
Right.
and improve academic outcomes and close those achievement gaps.
Right.
That's where that disparity comes in. That's where we are not meeting equity. We have groups of students in our Black and brown communities whose needs are not being met.
Right.
We have a host of ELL students whose needs aren't being met.
Right.
Low-income families whose needs aren't being met.
Right.
That's where that equity piece comes in.
Right.
Meeting students where they truly are and addressing those needs
Right.
and improving that. And making sure that we have the resources in place that truly supports them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to throw this idea and see if this is happening, because
Okay.
funding is a big thing to accomplishing everything that you're talking about, right? Let's just go with the social emotional learning, right? We know there's funding there. If I'm not mistaken, I think Mayor Cooper put the largest, or maybe Dr. Battle, maybe it's and both, invested the large amount of like social emotional learning monies into the budget in history ever, right? But money doesn't last forever. These things are forever growing.
Right.
Where does community partnerships play a part in that? As far as if I know there are specialists out there that deal with mental health. Can you volunteer, a couple of hours a month to our students here to come talk to you, whether you come to them or they come to you or something like that. How does that play a part in the social and emotional learning when it comes to investing, when it comes to meeting youth where they are, when it comes to just resources that may not be able to come, expeditiously through the budget, but they're community members that are willing to serve and willing to be like, hey, I have the time. This is my profession. I can serve here.
Yeah. So before I answer that question, you brought up the idea of funding, right? And so we are at an impasse right now. Metro Nashville Public School is the second largest school district in our state.
Okay.
We serve a little more than 80,000 students across our district, which is about 8 to 10% of the student population in our state.
Right.
The state is currently looking at how they are funding
Right.
students across our state. Right now, with the current funding formula, Nashville is expected to receive the lowest allocation of the other 146 districts. There's a total of 147. The second largest school district, serving 80,000 students, receiving the lowest allocation of funding.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
If the state is not doing their share, then guess who has to do it? The city.
The city.
And in order for the city to do it, what's going to happen? Taxes. Right?
Mm-hmm.
When is the state going to step up and do their due diligence and their right by our students here in Nashville? And so when you're talking about what can a school board member do, first of all, a school board member can understand that that is an area that they have to advocate for.
Right.
Their role as a school board member is to make sure that our district has the funding that they need.
Right.
That is building relationship with state level officials, as well as local level officials, as well as informing the community so that they can activate and get involved too.
Right.
Because it's going to take all of us to step up and say, Nashville needs its fair share.
Right.
We need our piece of the pie.
Right.
And we need to make it happen for our kids.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's ridiculous. And nobody wants more taxes, you know?
And nobody wants more taxes. But if taxes, if the state was doing their fair share and our city was doing what they needed to do,
right.
then we would be, it would be okay. It would make sense.
Right.
Right? And so when we look at this funding mechanism, you'll oftentimes hear the state say, oh, well, we fund at 70% of the budget. In Nashville, you'll hear them say that they fund at 70% of the budget and the city funds at 30%. In Nashville, that's vice versa. Nashville funds at 70% because they say we make a lot of money, so we can afford to.
Right.
And the state funds at 30%.
Yeah.
And so we really have to have, our community really needs to be informed about this.
Right.
And we really need to make sure that we're activating everyone to get involved in this conversation.
Right.
And really, really pushing that
Right.
and having those conversations. NOAA has been actively involved recently in this state funding mechanism, and there's a lot of nonprofits across our community that's doing so.
Right.
And really getting involved in that conversation. As far as partnerships are concerned, Pencil. Are you familiar with Pencil?
I'm familiar with Pencil.
So I sat on the board of Pencil for many, many years. And one of Pencil's role is creating and getting those partnerships for our school district.
Right.
To make sure that we are creating those partners, whether it is tutoring, whether it is providing resources, whether it is giving our schools the support that they need. So we have partnerships like Pencil, we have partnerships like Alignment Nashville, and other organizations that are coming in to be able to do so.
Right.
We need to continue to expand upon it. Right? How are we partnering with mental health organizations? There's programs like Star Nashville that brings in that level of support. We have the Oasis Center that's coming in for that level of support. So we have nonprofit organizations that are doing that work. We need to continue to expand and advocate on that.
Right. You bring up equality, and this is a big thing as far as gender equality now in our schools. Just making sure that the LGBTQ plus community specifically, youth have an outlet for it. They can feel comfortable, they can be themselves, and that's probably where some of their social and emotional learning comes in too. How is that being played out in District 4? I know as a state,
Right.
We have a lot of anti-gay bills as a state, with our governor. Come on, Governor Lee, come on, welcome to the platform anytime.
Yeah.
But how does your role as a potential school board member play into that, and having those type of conversations with parents, with your constituents? Because that's kind of, it depends, on where you sit when it comes to those type of conversations. What should be those conversations that should be had in school, those conversations that should be had in home. But how do we just make it a safe and brave space for everybody in our schools?
Great question.
Yeah.
No, great question. One thing that I applaud our district for doing and our school board for doing, they came out with a proclamation a few months ago, in response to the bills that came up through our legislation, and saying that we are going to make sure MNPS is an inclusive environment where every student across our district
Right.
can be who they are and show up the way they need to show up. And so for me, when I'm looking at, we have low literacy rates
Right.
in our district, right? And one way to help improve literacy in our district is making sure that our students have literature that reflects who they are and how they show up in the world. I have a black boy. You
Right.
talked about your son, right? When he reads a book that has another black boy in it, he gets all excited
Right.
because he can see himself in that literature,
Right.
right? He's a gamer. So anything related to gamers, he's excited.
Right.
To see a black boy gaming,
Right.
he's even more excited.
Right.
To see a black boy being an engineer, he sees his brother. Right? And so I think for us, we need to make sure that we are allowing our students and giving them the confidence to be, to show up,
Right.
right? And to show up in the way that they need
Right.
to best reflect. And so we have to create that inclusive environment. I'm Muslim. It's obvious,
Right.
right? And so we have had bills that says no English only bills.
Right.
I've had people tell me go home. And I'm like, where is home?
Right. Right. Point me in that direction.
Yeah, point me in that direction. Go back to where you came from.
Right.
My mom and my dad. Like,
Right.
so what does that really mean? So I know what it feels like personally as a black female, right? I know what it feels like in the black community to be otherized.
Right.
I know what it feels like as a Muslim to be otherized,
Right.
and as a female,
Right.
right, to be dismissed. And so I don't want any student to feel or to be targeted in a way that diminishes who they are and what they can be.
Right. This race is a little different.
It is.
It's a partisan race.
It is.
Democrats and Republicans. Some would say this is kind of muddy the waters a little bit because if maybe I don't know any of the candidates, but if they identify with the party I identify with, then I may just go with them, even if I don't understand the platform that they're on. How do you approach that aspect of it, knowing like in the polarizing climate that we're in, when it comes to picking parties, when it comes to politics in that way? How's that kind of shaped your kind of campaign a little bit? Your message, has it at all, or is it something you've had to figure out in this particular? Because this is the first time it is, in Davidson County, right? And
Yeah. So as a mom and as an educator, I need people to quit playing politics with kids. Partisan politics has no place in education. It really doesn't, right?
Right.
And where we're heading with this partisan politics is oftentimes not in the best interest of children
Right.
and what we should be doing for children.
Right.
And so I'm a proud Democrat. I don't back down on that,
Right.
Proud Democrat, proud to run on the ticket, but fundamentally just believe that we shouldn't have partisan politics in schools. I educate Republican kids,
Right.
and really, I even hate to say that because kids don't vote,
Right.
right? I educate all kids, regardless of their parents' political affiliation.
Right.
And we have to make sure that we are doing what's best for children. Right?
Right.
And that's how we need to center that conversation.
Right. Do you see that being an issue going forward when you, because that's what it comes down to. You have parents, right, that's going to say, oh, yeah, well, I thought Dr. Berthena was with me, but she's a Democrat, not a Republican. Do you see that being an issue, or do you see it being Republican kids in one classroom, Democratic kids in another?
I honestly don't see it as being an issue. I've had conversations with families on both sides of the aisle, and families just want what's best for their kids.
Okay.
They want their kids to have access to a high-quality education. They want their kids to be successful at every level, starting with their earliest of learners. They want them to have a strong foundation, and they want to be able to send them to a school that's going to provide it.
Right.
A lot of families are not caught up in what you're seeing at our state.
Right.
Right? A lot of, both on Republican and Democrat side, have an issue with it too.
Right.
And so what I have seen just in the conversations that I've had, I've seen a lot of bipartisan support, to be honest, across both aisles. Parents just want what's best, and they want to leave politics out of schools.
So, I usually start off with this, but you got it cracking real early in the conversation.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. But I think I'm just curious, and I believe our viewers and our listeners are curious too, of what inspires you, right, to get involved in education and also take it a step further to want to represent a district when it comes to getting involved in education and making sure we have a safety in schools and equitable education and everybody's voices is being heard and amplified in the manner that it needs to be, in that particular district.
What inspired me to jump into education was my mom.
Okay.
Again, I told you the story of my mom. She's a graduate of Metro Nashville Public Schools back during segregation. Her foundation for education and the people that poured into her, she poured into others. She was a preschool, she worked in preschool education for 40 years because she felt like Black children needed a solid foundation. A solid foundation. And they weren't getting it.
Right.
As I told you, I have 7 brothers.
Right.
7 Black men. Right? And 2 Black women. And she wanted to make sure and ensure that not only we had a solid foundation, but the community around her had a solid foundation as well.
Right.
My father was also an inspiration. My father owned a small community Black-owned newspaper in our community. And he started that newspaper because he was tired of seeing the negative perception of Black people in the community, and he wanted to change that conversation and uplift the positive voices of our Black community.
Right.
So my parents inspired me to get involved in community, to do what was right by community, and to make sure that we used education as a vehicle that could transform communities and change conversations.
Right.
Right? And so I started my career in early childhood.
Right.
Because I was following in my mom's footsteps, right? Then something got into me, and I switched from early childhood to high school. Jumped into it, right?
Right.
And loved it, and continued with that. As a teacher, I often saw how we had to lack of resources within our schools and trying to make it work.
Right.
And we had legislators at the state level making decisions about schools that had never been in a classroom,
Right.
and oftentimes didn't have children in a public school
Right.
to truly understand, right? And so as a teacher, I often saw that. And for me, I said, you know what? I want to go into administration too, because of my work in early childhood and administration, I felt that I could truly support our teachers and our staff to ultimately help our kids.
Right.
And so working in administration gave me the skills around building that culture and climate that we wanted to see, on really focusing in on data-informed best practices for our kids to improve those academic outcomes, creating a culture right, of accountability within our schools, that we all work together,
Right.
including our students.
Right.
And every member of our school community had a voice.
Right.
And I truly believe in every person in our school, every adult member in our school, being another advocate for our kid, to say, you know what, you can do this.
Right.
You got this.
Right.
And redirect them in the way to make it happen. I'm a village person.
Right.
It takes a community. And so going from there, I went into a school turnaround. We had a low-performing school that I worked with and turned around. That lent me opportunities into working with other schools. That went national, working with schools and districts, and just leveling the playing field, right? Because
Right.
we know the communities that are most impacted.
Right. We know.
We
Yeah.
know. And so we have to do better.
Right.
And if I could play any part in doing that, that's what led me to this.
Okay.
Okay? And so for me, when it comes to the school board and why I'm passionate about that, it really, I guess I'm at a position now where we need people who not only have the knowledge, but the expertise to be able to make change.
Right.
Have those important conversations and really improve things for our children. And so I didn't come up through the ranks wanting to be a politician, right? But if not me, then who?
Right.
And why not?
Right.
And so that is why I'm here. I am student focused. I am, and to be student focused, right? We need to make sure that we are taking care of the people that we are trusting our little ones with.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We have to make sure that we're doing it.
Right.
And we're not only talking about investing with them through pay, professional development,
Right.
restorative practice training, social emotional training. How do we create that culture and climate that we want to see to
Right.
make it sustainable, so that we can have that level of accountability and we can see growth and we can be intentional about practices that we have and that we can meet every single student where they are and provide them the supports they need to be successful.
It's a 4-year term, right?
It's a 4-year term.
4 years. You know.
And we don't have time to wait for somebody to figure it out.
Right. 4 years. What does 4 years look like with you? At the City
4
of District
years
4?
mean 4 years of education of elementary for a child, 4 years of middle school for a child, or 4 years of high school. And we don't need board members in there trying to figure it out. We need board members who have the knowledge and expertise to hit the ground running, to make intentional change and improvements across our district. There are great things that Dr. Battle is doing, right, across our system.
Right.
And we need to be able to support the great things, and we need to be able to reimagine the things that are not working, that we need to continue to improve. Our district didn't get here overnight.
Right.
It's not going to make an improvement overnight,
Right.
but we need to make sure that we keep our eye on the prize by making intentional, strategic, and measured outcomes that we want to see across this district. And we need to make sure that we are having those transparent conversations to be able to have it. As a school board member, we have one employee. One.
Right.
That's Dr. Battle. She has 9 bosses,
Right.
right,
Right.
that are representing 9 different districts across our city.
Right.
And so we need to be able to support her, guide her, and also redirect when necessary
Right.
to make sure that it is equitable across our district and that every student is having that opportunity and level of success, right? And we also need to make sure that we are advocating for our district as well.
Right. Support is a big thing, right? You need support in a campaign. You need funds,
I do.
volunteers.
I do.
How can people do that and reach out to you, whether they want to support financially, support with woman or man hours, or yard signs, or whatever they can do? You know, how
Hey,
can they
y'all.
support that? How can they do that?
Let me help you out here. So early voting starts April 13th through April 28th, and election day is May the 3rd. We need volunteers to help at the polls. So if they are willing to work at the polls, we need you.
Right.
Whether it's an hour, 2 hours, the whole day.
Right.
We need support at the polls. When it comes to donating to the campaign, we need those resources. Campaigning and politics takes a lot of money. And oftentimes I'm like, the amount of money that it's take, can we just give it to the kids?
Right.
Because sometimes it's just a crime, right? But that's the nature of politics, and that's the nature of campaign. So I would love your support there. You can visit our website at www.drberthena for metroschools.com. You can also find me on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can just give me a call. Call me up, 615-475-8162. I will answer the phone.
Hey, she ain't
So
put the number out there now.
I put my number out there, communicate, get involved. I have people calling all the time. Would love, love, love your support and your vote on May the 3rd.
Now, I think it's important because it is a different type of race now.
It is.
So it's like 2 steps.
It is.
And so
One race at a time.
One race at a time. Okay. Just making sure people understand. This is a cruise. This is a 2-step process here this time.
Yes.
And so okay.
So we have the Democratic primary that's coming up on May the 3rd, and this is when early voting starts in 2 days.
Right.
It looks like.
Yep.
For early voting. One campaign at a time.
Okay.
And so right now we need to finish out strong. We need to make sure that we are continuing to get out into the community and canvass and phone bank and work those polls. Tell your friends,
Right.
tell your family,
Right.
tell your neighbors, get out into the community. If you want to write a postcard, we even have an opportunity for you to do that. Any way that you would like to get involved in our campaign, we welcome it. We would really appreciate it. And if you're still undecided, call me up. Let's have a conversation. I appreciate
Or
it.
just watch this interview,
Or just watch this interview.
Yeah, right. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity.
no.
I really, really appreciate
No,
it.
thank you. And I want to leave you with the last word. Since you the special guest, is
thank
there
you.
is there anything that we didn't touch on just throughout the interview, or something I didn't ask you that you want to leave the listeners and viewers with, that we didn't touch on, that we didn't hit on? Any last points?
I guess the last point would be investigate your candidates.
Okay.
Really study your candidates. And that's from school board races to our judicial races. School board races are 4 years, right? And for me, 4 years is a long time to make an impact, right?
Sure.
Again, that's 4 years of elementary, 4 years of middle school, or 4 years of high school. So make sure you're investigating. Our judicial races are 8 years.
Right.
8 years is a long time.
Pretty much a decade.
Yeah.
Rounded on up.
Rounded on up. And so I just ask everyone to make sure that you are really looking at your candidates. Look at who they are. Ask them questions.
Right.
Contact them. Be engaged in this process. This is an important race that we have coming up. And I welcome any conversations and any calls in this race to make sure that you are voting for the right candidate to continue to move on to that general election. Again, this is the Democratic primary, and so I implore you and invite you to really study your candidates and know who you're voting for, understand what their platforms are, and understand how their knowledge and experience can help lead the way. So I ask you again, vote Dr. B for MNPS School Board in District 4. And on the ballot, it's the second name, longest name on the ballot. Helping you out here, guys. Longest name on the ballot, Dr. B for School Board in District 4. Thank you.
Well, look, I appreciate this. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
And I know
I did too.
The viewers and the listeners, they'll enjoy it too. And next time, pizza, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen.
Oh, you're good. It's all good. It's all good. Thank you so much for the time. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your invitation. This has been great. And I love your space.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
This is awesome.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And shout out to Symphony because she made this happen.
Yes, thank you, Symphony. This is awesome. I'm going to have to connect with you, girl.
Hey, Symphony, I need a founder's fee. All right. All right. Thank you, Dr. B. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.